are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And with that, this is Locked On Hornets Live. It's Hornets Talk for the hardcore fan, coming to you from the Gittimer.com studios in BEA beautiful Uptown Charlotte, which for the first time you are able to see live. I'm Doug Branson, and to my left, the man in the middle, David Walker.
Hit me in the high post, Doug, and then I'll swing it around.
That's good. That's
right?
That's basketball
That's
talk.
basketball
that checks
jargon,
out.
right?
We checked it out. That checks out.
I Googled it.
And holding down, speaking of basketball talk, holding down the left block, Justin Thomas.
Fellas, the NBA is here.
Fellas.
Hornets are looking good.
It's here. No more
Hornets
bad
are
NFL
looking good.
football. You can watch basketball now.
It's exactly right. I can't wait to watch these two games. We're going to get you ready for the Hornets opener on Wednesday, and then we're going to rush out of here and go watch some NBA basketball. This is an exciting show. It's our live premiere on YouTube and Facebook Live. It's a brand new medium for us, one we've been working very hard to put together. We have been in rehearsals and different kinds of things. We've got a big guest to go along with our live premiere. Hornets beat writer Rick Bonnell makes his first ever appearance on the program, so that's exciting. And a reminder, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Panthers fans, make sure to subscribe to the Locked On Panthers podcast with host Steve Reed. So I want to open up things. First of all, you may be new to the show. Everyone is new to this video thing that we're doing now. And so I want to take a minute or two to tell you what's going on before we dig in. Locked On Hornets has been covering the Hornets via podcast since 2013. We broadcast our show right here in Uptown Charlotte. We are all Charlotte area locals. Justin and David grew up in Charlotte. I'm technically from neighboring Gastonia, but I'm not ashamed. It's the home of James Worthy.
I would.
Sleepy Floyd, Hassan Whiteside, pride of Gastonia, Daryl Armstrong, and Fred Durst. So that's all I need to see. Gas House repping. Our motto is Hornets Talk for the hardcore fan. Our goal is to make you smarter than Bob at work, who thinks he knows everything about the Charlotte Hornets because he owns some kind of Larry Johnson throwback. Well, let me tell you something, Bob. You don't know everything about the Hornets. So we're going to make you smarter than Bob at work.
Now, give me my password.
Now, this is a little bit, we talked about this a lot, David, when we first started. This is a little bit of an exclusive club. We're not for everybody. We go deep into the Hornets in a way that you're not going to find on local radio, and certainly you're not going to find it on ESPN. No offense, Justin, who covers the Hornets for ESPN 730. But you're not going to find it on the national stations. Some of us love numbers, me. Some of us hate numbers, Justin. And some of us just have really great hair. That's David. So we've got all of the bases.
We checked all the boxes.
All the bases covered.
Trying to say.
But here's the important part. You are part of the show as well. The most important part. You drive the conversation, and with YouTube and Facebook Live, it's going to open up your participation in an entirely new way. So if you're watching live, please comment. Please ask questions. Justin and David both are paying attention to YouTube and Facebook. We're going to read some of your comments and questions as the show goes on. We'll spend some time later in the show doing that. It all works together to be the absolute number one best Hornets talk you are going to find anywhere. And with that, we launch.
And he's got to hit the three on that one.
And we're going to start each show by stepping back and talking about three things, one from each of us, that we've noticed in the past week of Hornets basketball. Could be something we liked, something we didn't like, or something that maybe, I don't know, put a thinking emoji face on us. I don't know. We're calling it the Step Back 3. David, tip us off.
Yeah, guys, I don't know about you, but this we get them every year. So this year is no different, but we get videos of MKG shooting, and they have progressively gotten better. And as we can see here, he made some. He's making them in practice, making that corner three. We've talked about that corner three too. But dudes, you tell me.
Dudettes. Hey, we have a 5% female audience. I got the numbers.
My dudes,
it's growing.
the form, okay, it's not rookie year, but it's creeping back. Or am I over worried that it's creeping back? I mean, it's going in. So look, I don't care how he gets it up there.
It's definitely odd, but it's shifted to the left.
The elbow, right?
He shifts everything kind of to the left and then makes a little hop to the left. But everything is in line. It's just not in the traditional line that most people listen. He's untraditional.
It's just not pretty.
Well, that's
it's getting better
sure.
though. It's come a long way.
It doesn't matter if it's pretty or not.
And that's the
I think I've proven that it doesn't matter if it's pretty or not. Sometimes you just have to get it done. My wife will attest to that. Justin, what did you see this week?
There's been a level of focus and I think guys understand. Clifford has talked about this team needs to be a pretty good shooting team, and last year they struggled. I think they were one of the worst teams shooting their two-goal field goal percentage. And this week, a lot of guys have been staying out to practice and really putting in time and getting those shots up. Kemba, Sessions,
well, we've got some audio, right? This is from Steve Clifford talking about who he thinks will shoot well this upcoming season.
I think Frank will shoot a lot better. I think Ramon Sessions will shoot a lot better. He's been doing a ton of shooting work with Bruce. I think Cody will shoot from range, I don't know, not three necessarily, but range a lot better. And I think Jeremy Lamb will get back to closer to where, his career numbers were too.
So there's Steve Clifford at practice 2 practices ago talking about who's going to shoot well. He named a lot of names there,
he
Justin.
Thinks everybody's going to shoot well.
My cousin Daryl, he's going to shoot well. I saw the janitor putting up a couple of shots. His stroke looked good. I mean, everybody. He's optimistic.
I would say if one guy needs to shoot the ball well, it's Cody Zeller. Everybody, when is Cody going to take that next step?
He's got to get back on the court first.
And he has to. That bone bruise has been keeping him out. But he's going to have to be able to at least knock down 15 feet to 18 feet. He's going to have to do that. And Coach has said he's worked on it. Cody has echoed the same sentiment, saying he's worked on his jump shot. So we can't talk about it anymore. Well, as soon as he gets ready to play, we got to see some.
Yeah,
results.
It's going to be there because it's been there all year. It's been there all last year, I should say. It's been there his whole career, right? And if he can hit that, because that was kind of the tease coming out of Indiana, right? Mm-hmm. He could be that guy to step out and hit that wide open, elbowish shot. So he's got to do it.
That makes him so important because they're going to want to play Roy, but Roy is not going to always be able to match up defensively. But you put Cody out there and he can defend, but you also need some points. So if he can knock down that jumper, that can be a really good step for this team.
All right, since we have video now, I'd like to briefly look at my favorite play of the preseason for my step back. This slightly beat out the Kemba Walker double no-look pass, which was nifty. It's nifty. It was neat. But this play happened against Miami, and it's important because MKG is playing the 4 in this play, and he could see some action at the 4 against Milwaukee opening night. And the set that they run here is really great. Let's take a look. So Ramon Sessions bringing it up here. MKG, he looks like he's going to go to the corner, but he doesn't. Marco's the decoy, and then Ramon fires it in there to MKG. Let's watch it again. So Ramon, you see a great screen set up by MKG to start this, and it allows Marco to get down into the paint. But you can already see Jeremy Lamb leaking in. You think MKG is going to flare out to the three-point line, but instead he doesn't. He dives down, and so does Jeremy Lamb. They set this double pin-down screen. Marco's going to come off that, and then you'll see MKG's man, Akara White, bites on it, and Ramon picks it out. Great pass, and goes to MKG there for the dunk. So big play there. It was my favorite play of the season. We're going to do this step back 3 segment every live show, so be paying attention to that. And each week, we're also going to have a question of the show. This week's question: who is the player that the Hornets cannot get to the playoffs without? We're calling this player the game over player, that if he were to suffer a season-ending injury right now would mean game over for the Hornets. We'll share who we think the game over player is later in the show. If you're watching along live right now on YouTube or Facebook, you can share your answer right now. And if you're listening to this on iTunes or watching later, you can tweet us what you think.
You can always tweet us.
Always tweet us. All right, let's go out to the Locked On line right now where we have a very special guest. This is his first time on the podcast, and he's live, Charlotte Hornets beat writer for the Charlotte Observer. He's been covering the team from the very beginning. Rick Bonnell. Rick, welcome to Locked On Hornets.
No, thanks for having me.
Rick, we're a day away from getting this new season started. What's the latest from practice today as the team gets prepped to head into Game 1 Wednesday night?
They're a little better off health-wise than I anticipated. I took it for granted. Brian Roberts has had this hamstring problem for so long that I took it for granted that he was the person most likely not to play on Wednesday, and he participated fully in practice today. So did Cody Zeller. That's the third day in a row that Cody's been able to practice, do everything without having a flare-up of that awful knee bruise that he's had. The person who I take it for granted is out is Frank Kaminsky. He's got that foot strain. He has not been able to do anything as far as practice all week, and so I wouldn't imagine what we'd see Frank before probably Saturday at the earliest is my guess.
Wow. Rick, Steve Clifford commented earlier in the training camp preseason period that Kemba Walker had improved his skills even more despite coming off a career year in nearly every major category. What improvements stand out to you from his preseason performance?
Well, I don't know that to be honest with you, I don't know that I've seen him enough to play to really necessarily quantify that, but I know that Steve feels great conviction that Kemba and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist have set themselves up to have really good seasons, assuming health. The interesting thing about Kemba's summer was that while he was held out of contact, even into a portion of the preseason, just because he had elective knee surgery, that didn't keep him from doing any of the sort of individual stuff. And Steve feels like he got that much better in his routines this summer as far as the long range shooting and the decision making in pick and roll, which are the two things that are so central to what make him dangerous.
Rick, since Nick Batum this offseason signed his near max deal, everybody is expecting so much different from him, or does he need to score all these points, or he needs to fill up the stat sheet? But that's just a figure because he's played well. Do you think there's any reason for him to change his game?
Absolutely not. It's funny the way you pose that question, and that's perfectly fine. But if people are expecting that because Nick's getting paid $120 million, that's going to change the way he approaches the game, not only do I not think that's the case, but that's specifically what Steve Clifford has told him not to do. The last thing they want Nick doing is putting some sort of artificial pressure on himself to evolve into something else entirely. They paid him the money because they thought that's what he was worth in the current market based on the way he played last season. They want him to be the same guy that fills up a broad spectrum of areas and keeps the team connected. They don't, to ask him to, what I'm saying is he's not suddenly going to go from scoring 16 points a game to scoring 27 points a game just because there are more zeros in his paycheck.
Do you see the development between him and Kemba Walker changing in any way because they've had a year under their belt now, or will it be the same dynamic as we saw last season?
I think it's less about Nick Kemba than it is about Nick MKG. They only got to play together for 7 games, and I've got the column. My column on MKG is the centerpiece of our Hornets coverage going into for Wednesday morning's paper, and a lot of what I wrote about is MKG. They need MKG to be the best he's ever been for one compelling reason. It is impossible, and I mean impossible, for them to be as good an offensive team this season as they were last season. You don't lose Al Jefferson and Jeremy Lin and Courtney Lee and continue to aspire to score 103 points a game. Clifford's thinking is that they've got to, while they can't be as good offensively, they've got a real chance to become better defensively if they can get a full season out of Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. I personally thought, you guys watch, I know obviously the fact that you're doing this podcast, you guys watch a lot of Hornets basketball. I really thought at the end of last season that Nick started wearing down because they were asking so much of him at both ends of the court. It's not realistic to expect him to orchestrate the offense and simultaneously guard the other team's primary scorer for 25, 30 minutes a game. MKG allows Nick to take some of that defensive responsibility off of his plate, and that's going to be very, very important. The other thing that's so important about MKG is people think of him as a small forward. I think of him more as a queen piece on a chessboard. He can guard anybody from a point guard to a power forward, and definitely will, maybe tomorrow night.
Rick, I wanted to follow up with you on MKG for a second. I mean, injuries have always been the problem and the concern with him. If he were to have another, extended injury that kept him out for a long time this year or re-injured something, I mean, would this team have to consider moving on or look for backup plans, or how do you think they would address that, given that it would be happening, almost every year?
The financial commitment to him would be far too great. The problem there would be, if you mean by that, would they look to trade him? I think if he had another significant injury, he'd probably be considered as damaged goods with a big contract. So, I think they have to hope for the best. But you're right. The reality of the situation, and it's not unlike when Gerald Wallace was a Bobcat, is that there is no other way for him to play other than exposing his body to injury.
Rick, there's been a general talk of a slow offensive start to the season for this team, that the defense may have to carry them. Do you think that expectation managing or a legitimate concern that it'll bear itself out in the first few weeks?
I think I don't even think it's a perception. I think every time you ask Steve Clifford what this season is going to be about, he says that they have to be great defensively immediately because they're not going to be all that good offensively in the short run. It's going to take them a while to figure out how to best optimize what scoring options they have. It sure hasn't helped that they've had all these little nagging injuries all season. It's all preseason. It's definitely undermined the continuity of what they're trying to accomplish.
Here with Rick Bonnell, beat writer for the Charlotte Observer. Rick, you talked about Frank Kaminsky. The injury may keep him out of this first regular season game, but he got a lot of minutes in preseason to show off his work over the offseason. How is the team feeling about the progression of Frank Kaminsky?
They know that he's a really good. They know that they're going to have a really good player offensively. The question, and Frank is, to his credit, is the first person to say this about himself, is at what point will his defense catch up to his offense? It was interesting. I had this long conversation with Frank over the summer, and he told me that he admires Marvin Williams so much for the way that Marvin understands NBA basketball, particularly defense, on such a sophisticated level. He was just talking. I asked him for an example of this, and he said that he just remembers plays where Marvin was so intimately familiar with the opposing team's offensive tendencies that things would start happening before they actually happen in a given play. Marvin would cut them off. And Frank said, at some point, I've got to get mentally to the point in the NBA where I can do things like that. And, the thing that we have to keep in mind about Frank that I think people miss sometimes is Frank is an amazingly skilled guy for a 7-footer. If you play him a small on him, he's going to take the guy into the post. If you play a big on him, he's going to hit threes. One of the things that Steve is trying to work toward is they need a countermeasure to other teams downsizing. That's become a big thing in the league, is to go with smaller units and to switch everything defensively. Potentially the solution to that is to play Frank some minutes at 5 with Marvin at the 4.
Rick, some of the other guys that were able to hang on after that preseason were Aaron Harrison and Trevion Graham, and I think a lot of fans were looking at Harrison especially, who had a bit of a struggles in the summer league and the preseason, and they compare him with a guy like Andrew Andrews, but specifically to Harrison. Any insight onto why he was able to stick around?
Familiarity. I really do think it was as simple as that. They were always going to fill the last 2 roster spots. Trevion Green always had to step up on the other, what I'd call spares, because Steve had a vision of needing another defensively oriented small forward at the end of the bench. I really think Aaron was just a matter of, none of these guys are going to, we're going to play anytime soon in an NBA rotation. And I just felt like I think what it came down to was they have invested a year in trying to make Aaron better, and I think you tend to give up on those kind of investments of time and money reluctantly, don't you? I mean, isn't that just human nature?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think familiarity and knowing the system, and again, when we talked about it this morning, I mean, when you're talking about if it's a waiver wire pickup, you're probably going to have to double his salary to bring somebody in. It doesn't make sense if you've got a guy who's already familiar and won't play much in the regular season anyway.
Remember that one of the subplots about this preseason that was it made it a little bit different is they had a plan on how to get the Greensboro Swarm off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
By having those other players, Suleiman and Tobin and those fellows on the roster throughout the preseason, that means that they have right of first refusal for their D-League rights, and they need to have some sort of a base to start that organization.
Rick, what's the one thing you think fans should know about the Hornets that maybe has flown under the radar this offseason and training camp preseason period?
Well, I don't know if what I'm about to say, sneaks under the fence, but that I think, but I mean, I think something we've been talking about, you can't talk about enough, which is that I think to a great degree that the season's outcome, the likelihood of their making playoffs, I think is going to be greatly contingent on MKG's health. I mean, I don't mean to sound like I'm keep beating the same drum, but what I'm saying is a healthy, effective MKG, because he can fill in so many different spots on defense, is really, really important. Clifford loves the way that Marvin and MKG can play off each other to play switching defense, and the same effectively applies to Nick.
That's perfect, Rick. That's our question of the show, who is the sort of game over player for this Hornets season. So that's great. We want to end this with a lightning round of sorts. You've been covering the team since the beginning, so let's do a little this or that. Some past players, past Coliseums even, and we're going to factor in performance with intangibles like legacy and meaning to the franchise. Just real quick, who would you give the edge to? We'll start with a point guard combo here, Muggsy or Kemba?
Kemba narrowly, because he's a more dynamic scorer.
Baron Davis, B. Diddy or Kemba?
Baron Davis for now, Kemba by the end of his Hornets career.
I like this answer. All right, Anthony Mason or Al Jefferson?
Al Jefferson is one of my favorite people in the entire world. He's a wonderful gentleman, and I'm always going to give him the benefit of the doubt on anything.
There you go. All right, this one's my favorite one here. Jamal Mashburn or Nick Batum?
I like passers. Given a choice of somebody who a passer who can also score, or a scorer, I will always take the guy with a wider skill set. So I'll say Nick.
I like it, but Mash could score though. All right, Charlotte Coliseum or?
But actually, something. If you'd said to me Glenn Rice, I might have said the opposite.
Oh well, next time I'm going to get you next time.
Do better,
Rick.
Doug.
All right, Charlotte Coliseum or Spectrum Center?
I think Pete Gwelly's monster, the gigantic scoreboard, gives it to Spectrum Center.
Put it over the top. All right, final one.
But I'll tell you, it'll never ever be any louder in an NBA game in Charlotte than it was in the heyday of the original Hornets. Never.
24,000 people cheering for the purple and teal. There was absolutely nothing like it. All right, last one, Rick. In your Twitter photo, you are sporting a fine mustache. Are you giving the edge to pre-stash Bunnell or post-mustache Bunnell?
That that shows how much I care about what my Twitter picture looks like.
That is a fine. No, don't undersell that, Rick. That is a fine mustache.
There's a reason that picture exists, though. You realize?
Well, you're behind Paul Silas.
That was that Sports Illustrated photo spread during the Bucks playoff series when Sports Illustrated was given this massive photo access to the Hornets, and Paul at the time was so big. I'll use the word big rather than the word that begins with an F.
He used that word. He was fine with that word.
That Leonard Lay and I had to go to absolute extremes when we were sitting at courtside to see around these screens that Paul would accidentally set.
Man, can you imagine having to come off one of those for real?
Oh.
And my 21-year-old son just adores that picture, so I can't change.
Listen, Rick, I'm going with pre-mustache. I think you should bring it back. I think that is a fine mustache.
I think it's fair to say that that's never coming back.
Well, thanks for joining us, Rick. We hope you come back. You can read Rick's daily coverage at charlotteobserver.com and follow him on Twitter at Rick_Bonnell. That's Bonnell. Rick, thanks for joining us.
Glad to. Have a nice day.
All right. So good stuff there from Rick, and some interesting. I like the mixing of the. Although I would take Anthony Mason. I'll be honest. I love Al Jefferson, but
I probably have taken him.
Anthony Mason was sort of not the original point forward. I think that's probably somebody. Pro Hoops history is going to tell us somebody
said
way
something
back in the
like
day.
that.
But I consider like Magic Johnson the original sort of point forward. But Anthony Mason did it in a way in the 90s. Not a lot of people, not a lot of Hornets fans, I think, remember how great a passer and a great a ball handler. I mean, he brought the ball up the court for the Hornets, and Anthony Mason, a true talent.
Rest in peace, Anthony.
Yeah. All right. Wednesday night is the night the Hornets tip off the 2016-17 season in Milwaukee against the Bucks. Here to help us out, here to help us figure out what's going on in the land of beer and sausage is the one, the only, the host of Locked On Bucks.
The big and unfortunate theme of the preseason was the Bucks' loss of Chris Middleton to a torn hamstring. It will probably keep him out for the entirety of the regular season, and finding a replacement for him is, as you might expect, very difficult, especially given the Bucks really didn't address the lack of depth on the wing before the injury. So they ended up trading Michael Carter-Williams, who had been on the block for a while, for Tony Snell in kind of a classic change of scenery move. Snell can sort of shoot threes. He can reasonably defend on the wing. Doesn't really do much else, but those two things are really the main things that you'd look for in a Bucks shooting guard at this point. Jason Kidd's been very open about him having every chance to start, but the question with Snell is, will he be healthy enough to start on Wednesday? He was trying to get through practices here in the couple days leading up to the game, but he hasn't played in a couple weeks due to a sprained ankle he picked up before the trade from the Bulls. So if it's not Snell, who does Jason Kidd go with at shooting guard? We know we'll see Matthew Dellavedova start at the point. He's blended in very nicely with Giannis Antetokounmpo and Jabari Parker at the 3 and 4. Giannis is effectively the point on offense. He'll see the ball most of the time. He doesn't defend point guard, so basically we get in all these debates about whether or not Giannis is a point guard or not, but whatever. He'll see the ball a ton. Dellavedova will be sort of the secondary ball handler. And who plays shooting guard if Snell isn't hurt? That's a good question. You've got Jason Terry, Rashad Vaughn, Malcolm Brogdon, who's basically now the backup point guard with MCW gone. Any of those guys could start, or you could see the Bucks go bigger. They tried this a number of times in the preseason. Mirza Teletovic slotting in at the 4, and then Giannis and Jabari defensively moving up to the 2-3, which isn't ideal given how big they are. I'm not looking forward to potentially Giannis having to chase Nicholas Batum around screens, but we'll see how it goes. Big spots, Miles Plumlee should start due to his pick and roll finishing ability. Greg Monroe probably coming off the bench. And tactically, what to watch out for. The Bucks talked a lot about pace and shooting more threes at the start of camp. Those were things they didn't necessarily do that well last year. And honestly, it didn't happen in the preseason either. They were last in pace, near the bottom in three-point attempts and makes. So will be interesting to see if they start to address that here as the regular season begins. With Giannis and Jabari, those guys will grab and go anytime there's a miss or a turnover. But we'll be interested to see, do they try to push the pace more off makes as well? And, can they try to get some advantage there?
Thanks to Frank Madden for that report. You can follow him on Twitter at BrewHoop, and also listen to the Locked On Bucks podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. The Bucks, I don't know what's going on in Milwaukee, but the Locked On Bucks podcast is one of the highest rated podcasts on the network. I think it's Frank Madden. I mean, that was some great analysis there from Frank on the Milwaukee Bucks. A very interesting team. Want to get to that in a second, but first I want to tell you, if you have a question about the Hornets, about opening night, about anything that Rick Bonnell, great interview we just did, if you have anything you'd like to say on that, or our question of the night, who is the game over player for the Charlotte Hornets? If the Charlotte Hornets were to lose X player, the game would be over. It's rage quit time. So let us know if you're watching live. Let us know on YouTube in the comments section, or on Facebook.com/@thehive. Let us know in those comment sections. If you're listening after the fact, maybe on iTunes, make sure to tweet us your answer, because we still want to read them during the rest of the week. The Bucks are a very interesting team, guys. They take a different approach than the Charlotte Hornets. Jason Kidd very much into experimenting and shifting his lineup based on a number of factors, where Steve Clifford, I think, really likes to make sort of small adjustments, studying playing groups. That's his big thing. But ultimately, he goes with his 5 best players for his starting lineup normally. So it's going to be sort of a clash of lineup rotation styles.
So this Giannis thing, where are you guys
Big
on
deal.
that? I mean,
on the point guard situation.
I mean, he's what, 6'11"?
He's large.
I mean, there's never been a point guard as tall as he. I mean, there's been tall point guards, sure, and they've tried to do it, but I don't think
they had one in Michael Carter-Williams and decided to trade him to the Chicago Bulls. Here's where I am. I think that it sounds good to say Giannis
it looks cool.
Point guard. It looks cool.
Yeah.
But let's be real. Matthew Dellavedova is the point guard of the Milwaukee Bucks, and I think
Tony Snell's the shooting guard, right?
Right.
Okay, so
he's he's really the 3, but a lot like Anthony Mason used to bring the ball up for the Hornets. Probably Giannis will do it more frequently than that happened.
Right.
But I think it sounds good to say Giannis is the point guard. Yeah, saying Giannis in general just rolls
His
off
name
the
has
tongue.
been very popular.
Antetokounmpo. It's just a great name. But I think that ultimately Matthew Dellavedova is the point guard. You're going to see Giannis handling the ball because him doing that creates all kinds of issues for the defense. The one thing that
there's a difference between saying, "Hey Mason, you bring the ball up," and Giannis is the point guard. Right.
No, yeah, this is all semantics. But what it really comes down to is the fact that Giannis, his ability to handle the ball and his long arms provides the Milwaukee Bucks offense with something that makes the defense look, and it makes the defense think. And those are the kind of things you want to introduce, if you can, into your offense, or things that make the defense move and shift and think, because then if he is a good distributor, if he is a good ball handler, then he can make things happen. It's a lot what Kemba does, just he's a lot smaller.
So it feels like more smoke and mirrors than substance. I mean, not that they're not going to do it, right? But I mean, I don't know, Justin, what do you think? Because it doesn't, I mean, do we think Giannis is going to be a point guard for the next 10 to 15 years of his career? And maybe that's not what they're saying either, but
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been such a hot topic this summer, and everybody's expecting him to have a breakout year and all of these things, but I think it's just smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if he was legitimately the point guard for 82 games. I just don't see it.
No, I think it will be interesting to see who guards that 3 and 4 position. If it's Giannis and Jabari at the 3 and 4, how the Hornets attack that defensively. If Nick Batum is placed on Giannis, or if they put MKG on Giannis, I think it will be interesting to see how that all shakes out.
Yeah.
I just look at this matchup, guys, and then I think about the fact that they play Miami, a team that's been weakened in the offseason, and Milwaukee had, as Frank talked about, had a poor preseason. The Hornets and the Bucks were the lowest scoring teams of the preseason among NBA teams. And I just look at these two games and I think the Hornets have an opportunity to get off to a 2-0 start if they play well.
I think a lot of things with the Bucks is they're big, but like they're all right. I think because they're just so big, everybody thinks they're going to be like a really good basketball team. But like outside of size, I don't think a lot of teams feel like, oh, we're playing the Bucks just because they're long. Like we can't beat them. Like I feel like this is a good chance if they come out and execute. I think they should go 2-0.
Well, they are long, but they also, I mean, when you look at Giannis and Jabari, I think you could also make the case that they are a little undersized for their position. I mean, if you can get physical with them, if you can play physical, then you can. I think the Hornets did a great job last season of attempting to disrupt Giannis going to the rim, and they frustrated him in a game last season. So it's certainly not impossible. And I think these two games present an opportunity for the Hornets this week before they come home to play the Celtics to get off to a 2-0 start. They're not they don't normally start fast.
The Hornets?
No.
No, they don't.
No, they're historically not a great starting team, so it would be
because usually they're
money in
playing
the bank.
LeBron in the Heat, and then they're playing LeBron in the Heat.
They opened up
and
with
then they're playing
Atlanta. Yeah, they opened up with Atlanta, Miami last season, which were 3 really tough games. This season, not so much, and they're not getting a lot of love, right, Justin? You were pretty frustrated about that coming into the show. I had to calm you down.
I don't want people to take this out of context. Think I'm a Hornets fan because one, it's all about the Lakers. But I've watched a lot of the Eastern Conference a lot, and a lot of people are picking the Hawks to win this division and then picking the Wizards. Mm-hmm. ESPN, I believe, had like 20 writers for the NBA. 2 of them picked the Hornets to win the division. The Hornets are better than the Wizards. Bradley Beal can't even play enough games, and you don't even know about Atlanta. I mean, I know they signed Dwight, but I thought that was for everybody to look at Atlanta. Maybe they know something I don't know, but I'm not sold on Dennis and Dwight just being oh, head and shoulders, they're just going to win the division.
It's interesting. There was little hype last year for the Hornets. There's little hype this year for the Hornets, and that may be a good thing, I think, because I think this team probably relishes an underdog role, just knowing the personalities on the team. Have they talked about that at practice at all?
Oh, I remember I've talked to Kim about it and MKG. Somebody had even asked Kimba during media days, like, yeah, people are expecting good things. And he was like,
really?
Huh? He was like,
Yeah.
all of the group text messages I'm in, everybody's telling me what people are saying about the Hornets. They don't think how good we're going to be. I asked MKG about it, and he said, oh, I don't even care about that. I love being the underdog. So I know what I expect from Kimba. Kimba knows what he expects from me, and we're just going to go out there and compete. And I don't think they care about all of that. Like, even somebody asked Kimba the other day, like, do you have any personal goals? He was, no, I don't really have any personal goals. I just come out here. I just want to win. And when you win, you get those accolades and that attention. But we're just out here to play basketball. So I think they're actually, I think that fits their culture. A lot of guys that they just want to work hard.
Well, and I think you look at these two games, Doug, they're playing, and Justin, they got Milwaukee, right? They're trying to figure out their new identity with Giannis at the point.
Right.
Snell coming in may or may not play, but who they are, and then the Heat too, right? I mean, how many changes did they go through? So who's the most stable of those teams? It's clearly the Hornets.
Has to be.
I think people take for granted the fact that the Hornets have a starting five that was pretty much set in stone halfway through the preseason. Once it was clear that Cody Zeller was going to miss a good majority of the preseason, I think people sort of slated Roy Hibbert into that starting center role for now. But I think people take for granted that fact because I look across the NBA and I talk to some of these people on the Locked On Podcast Network, and they're saying, "Listen, I don't know who's going to start. They'll probably release something night of," and that's the situation with Milwaukee. They can opt to go big, or they can opt to go small. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what if, just in the case of Milwaukee, does Tony Snell, newly acquired player, by the way, hasn't really been in the system all that much, does he start at 2? Or they have the option to go big and go Giannis at 2, Parker at 3, Teletovic at 4, and Plumlee in the 5 spot. So, you got to keep an eye on these things as it happens. But the fact that the Hornets have a starting 5 that has played a lot together in the preseason, hopefully will play to their advantage early on. Okay, we'll talk more about this in a bit, but Halloween is a week away, and I don't know if you've noticed, but we've got some Halloween candy here decorating our set. In fact, we'll have our second show on Halloween night. I'm not huge into dressing up. Yeah, 31st.
Halloween's on Monday, right?
No, Halloween's on Tuesday, right?
What?
I believe
I got to talk to my kids.
Don't fact check
Hold
me.
on.
Factcheck.org. I may have this incorrect. I was pretty sure
The 24th was yesterday. 7 days from then is the 31st.
is October 32nd. That's
Right.
Halloween, right?
Yes, Halloween's on a Tuesday.
No, is it? Wait, really? When is Halloween? Is
It's
it Monday?
Monday.
All right. So good.
Tweet us your answers. When is Halloween? Is it Monday or Tuesday?
Wow.
Listen, if that's the biggest thing I mess up on this show, I'm like, by the way, we have to appreciate this. You can't see all of it, but I'm basically.
You would have been so upset when these kids are just banging on your door and you think it's the night before Halloween.
Right. Where are the kids? I have all this candy. I've never been upset over extra candy.
No.
But I have all of these computers here operating different things on the show. I feel like I'm like captaining the Starship Enterprise. Anyway. All right, so I'm not into dressing up for Halloween, as producer Katie will attest, but I am into consuming large amounts of candy. So let's compare our favorite Hornets players to pieces of Halloween candy. David, you're first. Hornets player, piece of candy, go.
Yeah, so I used a little multimedia memory recall, as I tend to do. All of my childhood memories are thankfully now they're on YouTube.
Wait, this sounds like a Tom Cruise sci-fi movie. What are you saying to me right now? Like what mind meld memory? What is this?
Well, okay, so Kemba, when I think about Kemba and the way he moves and his step back three, it reminds me of that opening sequence to the Gummy Bears cartoon when they're just bouncing everywhere. And they're just little guys and they're just bouncing back and forth. And
Disney,
you can't
wait
catch
a minute.
them.
This was on Disney?
I believe it was Disney's version.
I was a
don't know.
Nickelodeon
You're calling me
kid,
out on
so
that?
I didn't have cable as a kid.
Well, this probably
So I don't-
predates either of you two guys. I should know, but go look it up on YouTube. Great theme song. As you pointed out, not as good as DuckTales, but these little guys are jumping everywhere and they can't catch them. It reminds me of Kemba and how he just jumped back and stepped back and hit that three.
I like that. And so we have the gummy bears here.
That's it. Plus gummy bears rule. So there you go.
Kemba Walker. Yep, gummy bears. All right, Justin, you're next up. What candy have you brought us, and who does it represent from the Hornets?
I would like to show the world about this. These Trolley Sour Bright Crawlers. I'm sure some of you know of this and how great they are. And what I like about the Trolley Sour Bright Crawlers is a bag of goods. You know who I compare that bag of goods to? Yes, a bag of goods. Sweets, delights, all types of good things.
I think we found our first drop.
And when that comes to one player on the Hornets, it's Nick Batum. If you go in here, you can pull out a red or blue. You can get a no-look pass. Mm-hmm. You could get a pull-up three. I could grab this.
A lot of different options.
Oh yeah, I could grab a red and yellow. Some people like the red and yellows, and you know what that means? It could be a strip, it could be a block, it could be taking the charge. This man Batum, he can do it all. And these Sour Bright Crawlers, they hit every taste bud.
Get a shot of these, Doug. Can we get a shot of these?
Well, we
this
can't.
Bag of goods.
We
here?
can't. I can't move. Okay. I can't move. There's limits to what I'm able to accomplish.
Trolley Sour Bright Crawler.
It's a miracle we're on the air right now. So yeah. Okay, I have a couple, but I want to go to my main one. And my candy that I've selected this is a controversy. This is probably the hottest take of the show. I hope everyone is ready for this. I've picked candy corn as my candy of choice. And I know that candy corn has a bad reputation. It's got a bad rap. But I'm here to defend candy corn. It's delicious, and it's underrated, and everyone's skeptical about candy corn. And it tastes good. I mean, it's not the...
No one's skeptical. They know what candy corn is.
They're skeptical about candy corn. I think people get...
It's a known quantity.
The national media has labeled candy corn...
The media.
Blame it on the media.
Yeah, it's a conspiracy.
Everything's rigged.
This is the greatest candy. All right, so candy corn is Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. And just like Michael Kidd-Gilchrist offense, it tastes decent enough. No, it's not like chocolate. It's not the greatest, but it's decent enough, and people are giving it a bad rap. But here's why I really picked this, because there was a trick that I used to pull on my little brother during Halloween. I'd cover my entire candy stash in candy corn because I knew he hated it. I was okay with it. He hated it, and it played perfect defense for me on Halloween. It was very strategic.
You deserve Clapton and Ric Flair. That was great.
I like what you did there. You brought it back around.
That was great.
I didn't know where you were going with that. I'll be honest.
Don't eat them. They're terrible.
They're fine.
Hey, you know what's funny?
They're fine.
I shouldn't have put this in my mouth while I'm talking on the mic, but
how rude.
The funny thing is, I went into the store before the show to get this stuff, and I almost got the cheap. This is just a prop. I almost bought the cheap brand of every candy. I had to get the name brand here, which says made with real honey, which made me think, wait a minute, candy corn is made with honey. I didn't even know that.
Corn.
I don't know.
I don't even
know. I thought it was just ground up hopes and dreams. I didn't know what it was made of. I got a couple more. I want to reel these off because I love these type of segments. I put way too much thought into them. All right, so MKG's candy corn. Marvin Williams is Snickers because he's the full package. It's Snickers full package. Peanuts, caramel, nougat, chocolate. I mean, I
had one for Marvin.
Okay.
It's raisins. It's nature's candy. He got back into nature last year. He went on the run. He got back in shape. But Marvin's full name is Marvin Gaye Williams. Marvin Gaye sang Heard It Through the Grapevine. The California Raisins sang Heard It Through the Grapevine.
Oh, I feel
you should have gone with that one.
These are great.
You should have gone with that one, and then we could have had raisins.
Well, nobody wants raisins. I'm just saying.
No, they're kind of.
I like raisins.
Listen, raisins. Here's the thing about raisins,
though, right?
Yeah.
Raisins are prunes with better PR. So that's my thing about raisins.
Okay.
All right, Frank, you're gonna love this one. I almost went with this one, but I had a good candy corn story that I had to share. But Frank is a Tootsie Pop. He's got a good outside game. We're told that there's a good inside game. We don't know because we just see the outside right now. It's taking a little while. So basically the question is, how many post-ups does it take to get to the center of Frank Kaminsky's offensive domination? So that's the Tootsie Pop one. I almost went with that one. Hawes is Starburst. Okay? Because most of the time, you're getting a really good eat. Sometimes you get 2 pink ones, and we all know the pink ones are the best. But there's sometimes, every once in a while, you open up a red Starburst and you go, I don't remember even trying red before. And then you pop it in, you go, oh my God, red is terrible. Why did I ever? Well, red,
No,
everyone.
whoa,
Everyone
went yellow. The red is great.
Clearly, it's yellow.
Oh, sorry, guys. I didn't study my Starburst polling data before we got on here.
No excuse.
The point is that sometimes Spencer Hawes has some decision-making issues, but there are great qualities to love otherwise.
So, David, can we say that would have been the yellow one? The yellow
Definitely
Starburst?
yellow.
Okay.
Yeah, obviously, everyone knows that.
Just making sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Clearly just tucked in now.
Well, listen, it was nice joining you, fellas. Next week, these guys will be gone, so don't worry
Listen,
about that.
every October 32nd, Doug, it comes around and you get your candy corn.
That's the new Halloween, October 32nd. Just like the Trump said, they're voting on November 29th or something. Okay. If you have a Halloween candy to Hornets analogy comparison, tweet it to us at Locked On Hornets, or maybe you want to go to YouTube Live if you're listening or watching along. Post it to YouTube Live or post it to Facebook because these fine gentlemen are keeping up with that.
I got one.
Oh, you got one? Go ahead. Let's read it.
Our friend Daniel Tapp, Hawes is a circus peanut.
Okay. Is there an explanation?
Not a lot of people like them, but they are technically candy.
Oh, wow.
Oh, come on.
That was good.
That was good, though. That was good.
Right.
Wait, hold on.
That's a sick burn.
All right. Let's lay off Spencer. No, seriously. Spencer is going to be the backup center, and he's shown some flashes of good play in the preseason. It's just that occasional runner that's the issue. Okay. Any more? Any other ones?
That's it for now. I'll keep you posted.
All right. Well, let's circle back to our question of the show. Who is the player that the Hornets cannot get to the playoffs without? We're calling this player the game over player. Pew, pew, pew. Who is your game over player, David?
For me, it's Kemba Walker, and it's something I've been saying all preseason long. The backup point guard position was in such good shape last year with Jeremy Lin. He is now not here, of course. And they brought in Sessions, who we've talked about at length, is a solid player, has been here before, knows the system, but he doesn't provide the same spark. And behind him is Brian Roberts. And to me, if Kemba plays at the same level or a bit higher than he did last year, I just think he's the leader of this team, and it's going to go as far as he can lead them. And to lose Kemba for any extended period of time and then having to rely on that point guard depth is going to be death for the Charlotte Hornets.
That's a good. You saved it.
It's on Halloween.
That's very nice. Justin, who you got? Who's the game over player for the Hornets?
It's definitely Kemba. It is Kemba. And
Two votes for Kemba.
Yes. In this league, your point guard play has to be stellar. I'm a Sessions big supporter, but also he played for my Lakers, and he was good. But when you needed him to be better, that was just all you got. And that's not a discredit on him because he's a backup. Kemba brings a lot of flair. He brings scoring. He brings a lot to this team. And they could have everybody. They could have Batum. They could have MKG. They could have Marvin, all having great years. But if Kemba goes down, this season's over.
All right. So I want to read a few of the comments that I'm seeing on Twitter about this before I get to mine because I'm going to spoil it. It's not Kemba Walker. Let me get a few of these. We have one from Nene Bro says it's pretty clearly Kemba. Got another one here from Locks the Fox. Kemba.
Right.
I'm going to be in the minority. And then Grant saying it's Steve Clifford. Well, he doesn't play, but here we can't take this for granted either because we've seen coaches last season have to sit out for a while. Steve Kerr. Jason Kidd, who they'll face off against Wednesday. So that's not a given that a coach is going to be completely healthy through the season. So Grant saying without Steve Clifford, this thing is game over. Richie saying MKG again, but they made the playoffs without MKG.
That's my thing with MKG, but Rick mentioned it too. But they at this point they're kind of experienced playing without him. I mean, I think he's key. I think he's key to their success.
Yeah.
I just don't think he's maybe the linchpin that, if he goes down, then the rest of the team goes down.
Are you ready for this? Because no one said my answer. Let's bring it in for the close cam. If I can. We'll see. Oh, there we go. Let's bring it in close here for this one. I'm going to tell you, the game over player, the player that the Hornets cannot live without, is Nick Batum. That's right, Nick Batum. And I'll tell you why. Because we know that Nick Batum makes Kemba Walker better. We have the data. Kemba plays so much better when Nick Batum is on the floor than when he is not. And I think we saw it in the playoffs last season. What a even a half Nick Batum takes away from this team. And I think, Kemba is definitely the guy that the ball is going to go to at the end of a game when it's close. But Nick Batum is the guy that brings you out of a 4-point, 6-point deficit in the fourth quarter with 4 minutes to go. Even in the preseason, guys, we saw him making tough shot after tough shot. He's already in regular season form, and I really think that Nick Batum is the engine that makes this Hornets team go. And if they lose him, I think it's game over. I don't even think they make the playoffs, much less have success once they got there.
Well, let's be honest. Kemba, MKG, to a lesser extent, but I think if Kemba or Nick go down, it's going to be tough for them to make the playoffs. But to your point, I mean, Nick's obviously a super important guy. They gave him all that money for a good reason. He was a huge part of their success last year. So, yeah, that's another key guy.
Now, what if Clifford went down? Nobody has any faith in Patrick Ewing?
I have a lot of faith in Patrick Ewing, actually. The whole coaching staff. I mean, Clifford's done a great job building that staff up. I just think you lose your head guy, it's tough for anyone outside of Luke Walton, right?
Well, there's so much respect. There's so much
the
respect
greatest.
for from the players to the coaching staff. But I will give Justin credit there. The coaching continuity is something, again, not talked about a lot from the Hornets organization, but they do have a coaching staff that has been there for several years. So God forbid anything happened to Steve Clifford where he had to miss any time. I don't think they miss a beat for at least a short period of time.
Here's another one, Doug, we did not mention from our guy Ben Stanley, Marvin, which brings up a good point. I mean, leading three-point shooter last year, shot blocking, defense. He brings so much to the table that they lose him, they are losing a lot. So, Marvin Williams, a key guy last year, and they'll be counting on him again this year.
Well, you know what's strange about that? It wasn't his three-point shooting that the Hornets were missing in that playoff series against Miami. It was the shots that he was missing at the rim that I felt like were real, because the Miami Heat did a great job of not only taking away the three-point shot from Kemba Walker, but they were staying home on Marvin Williams' shot as well, and Marvin Williams was able to drive, get to the rim, do some things, but not able to finish. So, yeah, I think they need Marvin to do less early so that if they do get to the playoffs and they get into one of these tough first-round series again, they're going to have a full-strength Marvin Williams who can finish at the rim. So great comments from everyone. I want to know, do we have any questions from YouTube or Facebook?
I did come across one on Facebook.
All right. What do we have from Facebook.com?
All right. I don't want to butcher this name, but
just give us the first name.
All right, this is from Mark.
All right.
Mark
you
B.
nailed it.
You nailed it.
nailed
Mark B., this is for you, my man. Who do you guys think will be the Hornets' most pleasant surprise this season?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think, have we visited this topic?
I don't think so.
Pleasant surprise, guys. Pleasant.
Oh,
Very colorful
pleasant
word.
surprise. Well,
I feel like the one candidate that pops into mind immediately is Jeremy Lamb.
That's right.
Because,
That's right.
So if you don't know, Jeremy Lamb had a great start to the season last season, but faded away and was eventually relegated to garbage time by the time the playoffs rolled around. And Jeremy Lamb has said in the offseason that it was due to basically not being ready game to game, just his body, his mentality, and eventually it cost him a spot in the rotation. And so now he has a new mindset, and he certainly, and it's just not just us saying this, but other players are commenting on how Jeremy Lamb has had such a great preseason. So I think if he continues it, but it's one of these things where, okay, he's the candidate, but is he going to sustain it through the rest of the year? That's the question.
I knew that was going to come up.
Well, I'll give you one more. It's a guy that Clifford's mentioned, somebody that Rick also hit on. It's Frank Kaminsky.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that they're looking for to step up and provide some offense and some defense, really, in his sophomore year. So, and that's a guy that I don't think a lot of other people around the league expect much, if anything, from. We've heard some of the national views on him, and they're not where he was drafted, what he can give this team. So if they can come out and he can shoot the ball well, if he can come out and do some of those things like he's learning from Marvin, right? If he can turn into a little bit of that kind of player.
Well, and the important thing to note is that without Jeremy Lin and without Al Jefferson off the bench, the Hornets don't have an alpha dog. They don't yet have an alpha dog scorer that's immediately popped up in the preseason. Frank Kaminsky's going to have the same amount of minutes roughly that he played last season, but I think, yeah, you're right. He's going to be asked to do more, to be more aggressive. And so he'll have the same run, but will he have the same effectiveness? That will go a long way to tell you what this Hornets bench is going to be able to provide as far as offense. And yeah, he has the opportunity to be a pleasant surprise. But I'm gonna give the edge to Lamb here because I just think he's shown an ability to take over a game, to impact a game in a significant way that we haven't seen as consistently from Frank Kaminsky. So I give the edge to Lamb here.
I do think by, let's say, January, I do think Marco Bellinelli can be a name that people will kind of gravitate to. I think it's going to take him some time to get used to playing with the guys and figuring out his role. But I think once he gets comfortable completely, I think Bellinelli can be a player off the bench.
Do we have a question from YouTube? What is it? Hold on a second. What do you have? You're pulling up something. Mentions
I'm multitasking.
That hair is amazing.
I was just going to give a shout out. Thanks.
Hey, the hair is great, is it not, folks? Thank you.
Questions from YouTube. No, we did have one other comment just on the most valuable or the player that could not go down from our guy Walker Keith 82. MKG is the difference between the top 4 seed. Kemba is the difference between not making the playoffs. So another good way to look at that.
I like that.
I think people are going to be pleasantly. Actually, I'm changing my vote. I think Ramon Sessions.
Oh my God,
has something to say this season because he's a 10-year veteran. He's feeling confident. He's back in a system he knows. And he, as you heard earlier in the show, Steve Clifford commenting that he's improved his shooting. We haven't seen it in the preseason. He's sort of keeping that in a lockbox.
Everyone improved their shooting.
Hey, can we say? I'll say a few things before I get to this one. We had Kemba Walker work with Bruce. We had Marvin Williams,
shooting coach
work with Bruce. Yeah. And after every practice, who's working with Bruce? Ramon Sessions, and they're getting after it. So I'm just saying.
Listen, there's a gaping hole left by Jeremy Lin that Ramon Sessions perfectly fills in terms of being able to get to the rim and get fouled and accumulate points in a way that you go, wait a minute, how did Ramon get 16? And it's because he went to the free throw line time after time. I'm telling you, you're going to see it. And I think he's filtered. Here's why I think he's going to be a pleasant surprise. Calm down. He's.
every time he finishes at the basket, I'm just pull up my phone waiting for it.
I think he's filtered out some of that bad Ramon that we remember from the Bobcats days. He's shed some of that.
He's washed that. He's cleansed himself.
Right, just
like
the Bobcats cleansed themselves,
right,
and now are wearing purple and teal. So is Ramon. So thanks for all of those great comments, those great questions. We'll be back next week on YouTube and Facebook. So make sure that you're watching us live and you're commenting because that's what really drives this show. Every week we save a little time at the end of the show for one last thing, usually something fun, something neat, something light. Today's show was pretty light. We did some fun stuff in the show. So, and since today's a special day, the beginning of a new era in this show's history, I thought we'd take a little time to thank each and every listener out there, those that are tuning in for the first time, or maybe you've tuned in to the Locked On Hornets Daily podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, and you're like, wait, what is this live thing? We've been doing this live thing for going on 4 years now. And this whole video thing is new for us. It's going to be fun. It's going to allow us to do things that we've never done before. Could be a little bumpy here at the start, but I thought this was a great first run. So we just want to thank you for hanging with us, and especially those that have religiously hung with us and favorited our dumb tweets from season 1 on. So thank you for listening, but more importantly, thank you for caring, and thank you to Justin for joining us, for joining the team last season and sticking with us. He's at practice every single day, getting you the information that you need on the Charlotte Hornets, and really, he helps this show out in ways that don't really get mentioned all the time. So we're mentioning it now. And thanks, David, for putting up with my basketball nerdiness every weekday. And last but not least, thanks to my lovely, wonderful, amazing, patient wife and also producer, Katie. I would not have created this show or kept it going all of this time without her. So big thanks to Katie.
Absolutely.
So I think that's how we're going to end it. That's all for this edition of.
Okay. 1 second.
Okay.
Just we're thanking spouses and wives and families. It's not like feels like the end of the season, but instead of the beginning. But
this is such a beginning of a new era.
Thank you to my wife.
Hey, don't try to like get on my coattails.
Well, she just said she wanted wine on the way home, so
she'll be thanking you.
Yeah.
For bringing home the wine. All right, that's all for this edition of Locked On Hornets Live. Thanks again to our guest, Rick Bonnell of the Charlotte Observer. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Hornets. Subscribe to us on iTunes and stay up to date on the Hornets every single day. We'll catch you back here next Tuesday live at 6 o'clock p.m. For David and Justin, who are about to scarf down some candy, I'm Doug. Go Hornets, go America, let's swarm Charlotte.
Happy Halloween.